Rohan, you've not been on the Scary Lovers podcast before. I know you're a gigantic fan, though, so I know you're well aware of my DJ skills. The time I've spent on Ibiza with Calvin Harris, David Guetta, some of those cats doing my DJ stuff. Cindy is finally coming around to being okay with it, and as a dedicated life partner of 50 years, I really appreciate that she's with me on this. But anyway, this is the Scary Alvarez podcast. I am, of course, Scary Alvarez, wine island enjoyer, Sherry wine destroyer, Jake's grandpa, and Cindy's plus one when she'll have me. And we're very happy to welcome Rohan from Bucky's Fifth Quarter. I know you're more than that. You are probably a son and a brother and all kinds of things to other people. But to me, you are the editor of Bucky's Fifth Quarter. Welcome aboard the podcast, and give a little bit of background on yourself to a few of my listeners who may not know.
Yeah, I've been the managing editor here at Bucky's Fifth Quarter for a little bit since January of 2023. I was a staff writer before that for about 5-6 months. And so I've been here covering the Badgers here for the past 2.5 years or so, 2 years or so. And really, it's been a blast. Obviously, just the opportunity. I've gotten to do a lot of work. I also do a lot of high school recruiting work for SB Nation. That's the company that I work for. Have our videos that we post for interviews. I'm there really with a lot of press conferences, a lot of the media opportunities here. Get to cover all of that. So managing editor here at Bucky's Fifth Quarter, trying to get you guys the most up-to-date news as well as some editorial pieces from a lot of our fantastic writers over there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know you're subtly referencing me. Um and my writing. Yeah, well, welcome aboard. And obviously, and I want to remind everyone who's on this, uh please subscribe, because when you subscribe, uh it jumps this video ahead of things like Billy just lost his first tooth from like 2017. You get some crazy stuff on here. But yeah, it's been very helpful. So it's you, the viewers, who make this what it is, and also largely me. But anyway, we're going to talk about the big news of today, and then the other issues surrounding. Of course, Braedyn Locke has entered the transfer portal. Not a big shock to anyone who's heard that, but Rowan and I are going to kind of go into this a little bit. What might have precipitated this, although we think we know where Wisconsin goes from here, what the room looks like. But Rowan, not that this is the most shocking news, but how does this wash over you seeing Locke hit the portal today?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, was this unexpected? No. I think you can understand the logic as to why Braedyn Locke entered the transfer portal. Obviously, was a starter here in a much bigger capacity this past year. Started 9 games for Wisconsin, went 3-6 in those games, and really the inconsistencies were on display for a good portion of his career here at Wisconsin. Obviously, a younger guy thrust into the spotlight after injuries, which is an unfortunate situation for Braedyn Locke in a way, but ultimately, with the way Wisconsin was going to go in terms of their schedule for 2025, which many could even say is stronger than the schedule that they faced this year, Wisconsin was going to need an upgrade at quarterback. Braedyn Locke understood that. There is a growing, level of optimism. Really, it's becoming closer and closer to a true reality that Wisconsin will target a quarterback in the transfer portal. We'll get to that later. But obviously, Braedyn Locke, probably not the front runner to start next year, is looking to get an opportunity elsewhere. He goes with 2 years of eligibility left. This is, like an unsurprising move, but to me, it is a little bit more surprising in the sense, Braedyn Locke, it seemed like, at least for this time, he didn't put his name in last week. He didn't put his name in at the end of the season. He had told reporters, at the end of the year that he was actually looking to return to Wisconsin. His younger brother, Landon, signed with the Badgers. Ultimately, though, after all the discussions that he must have had with the people around him, he is entering the transfer portal, signifying a new era here at Wisconsin.
That's all well said, and I don't think we need to be Nostradamus to speculate that a conversation likely took place between Locke and new offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes after Locke had already indicated he was going to be staying at Wisconsin. And it is my suspicion that something in that conversation regarding the future of the program, the future of Grimes' offense as he saw it, and Locke's role therein, uh, might have made that move. This is speculation, of course, but that would certainly seem logical. And I want to back up a little bit. I'm not gonna moralize this because I've made jokes may not be the right word for it, but there's a sort of a exhale amongst the Wisconsin fan base when this has happened with Locke entering the portal. I don't think there's too many fans who are having a rough time accepting this. I think it seems like the fan base is pretty happy. But I do know you feel similar to I do, and this is not moralizing, but this is a human being. This is someone who has, by all accounts, given his absolute best effort to Wisconsin. He's a team guy. He's a locker room guy. So I can say this in all sincerity. What we may make memes and things like that. The reality is, I wish him nothing but the best in the future. I think there was a bright future ahead of Braedyn Locke. It may be more in the coaching realm, of which I think he'd be a very good one. But I do wish him the best. And Rowan, I presume you feel similarly.
No, absolutely. The part that fans don't necessarily get to see is how Braedyn Locke conducts himself as an individual. I've gotten the chance to get to speak with him the last 2 years, with him being a starter with the media, regardless of a good game or a bad game. He goes out there, he does his job, he answers the hard questions, he takes accountability for his actions, he understands the need to get better. And a lot of people don't get to see the behind the works, behind the scenes work. For some guys, it doesn't click necessarily. For some guys, it's the effort. For Braedyn Locke, though, it isn't the effort. His work ethic, you can talk to anybody in that locker room and they'll tell you his work ethic is unmatched. You can talk to any coach. I mean, that's what Phil Longo really preached the entire time that Braedyn Locke was his starter. It was his work ethic. Unfortunately, obviously, things on the field didn't necessarily translate in terms of decision-making and things like that. But his work ethic was unmatched and really just an all-around great kid, a guy who a lot of people, there was a reason he had a lot of supporters, and you can understand it. I feel for him. I wish the best for him, wherever his next destination is. Hopefully he gets a chance to compete, to develop. And if coaching is the way that he kind of wants to go in his future, hopefully he can transition into a role there that best suits him, wherever that might be, even if it is at Wisconsin after his playing career is over.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, he's an easy guy to root for. He's one of those. It's not that I wouldn't root for anyone who's calling plays for Wisconsin. I mean, but this kid really, the old cliche, like he does it the right way. He's a gym rat. He's the first guy in the film room and last guy out of the film room. He's the want your daughter dating. I'm like that kind of. He had that kind of thing. I think he was very well liked and respected amongst his teammates. I don't know that. That's my guess. But he's a kid who you suspect will be successful in life. Whether that includes a fruitful, bountiful college football career as a quarterback, that remains to be seen. But there are fits I can imagine where he would do very well. So I do wish
No,
him luck.
yeah, most definitely.
We're going to move on, and now the the sort of, for lack of a better term, kind of the elation of Badger fans kind of seeing that room open now, knowing there's going to need to be a transfer portal ad or two. But let's step back and see what this room looks like, and we'll go from there. Okay, we got Milos, freshman walk on, Mabry Matoyer, freshman, 19-year-old. And then you have Landon Locke, still, unless I've heard something, and four-star recruit Carter Smith, both 18-year-old, both in high school right now, finishing up their high school careers. That is a very unusual. I know it's the portal era, but that's a very unusual and thin quarterback room for Wisconsin. It's a little bit scary. I mean, Cam Rising apparently is going to be possibly coming back another year. He could be like his age is like two or three of those guys combined. I feel like Cam Rising
Yeah.
over at Utah. This is insane. But Van Dyke's gone, the crew's gone, Locke's gone. And so it just underscores the importance of the next subject I'm going to get into, which is the transfer portal ad of quarterback or quarterbacks. And I think we'll get into this. You need a quarterbacks coach to be named first. Perhaps there'll be a pairing. But what do you think this is going to look like? It's not going to drag on. This is going to be something that's going to shake out, I think, fairly quickly. But getting a quarterbacks coach hired and then bringing in a transfer quarterback or perhaps two transfer quarterbacks. What's your thoughts?
I do think that this is a necessity, and I honestly think this is going to be a reality. But you mentioned two dominoes. I think that there's a little bit of a trickle-down effect that'll happen here when it comes to Wisconsin and getting their transfer portal quarterback. Entering the offseason, Wisconsin had quite a few scholarship quarterbacks. They actually had, 6 scholarship quarterbacks projected for their 2025 room. Cole LaCrue, Tyler Van Dyke, Braedyn Locke, and then the three names you mentioned with Maybert Matoyer, and the two freshmen with Carter Smith and Landon Locke. But regardless of the numbers that they had, it was pretty apparent Wisconsin was going to target a transfer portal quarterback for the third consecutive offseason. Why? Well, number one, the standard of quarterback play has not been good enough here at Wisconsin, and there's been too many uncertainties with the current room. Tyler Van Dyke is coming back off a torn ACL injury, and you don't know necessarily how he's going to recover. Moreover, you don't really know that he's going to be ready for spring ball, which is when Wisconsin would like to implement, a new quarterback into their new offensive system. And so you were going to want to have at least one other veteran or known presence at quarterback there. Obviously, Braedyn Locke, we just talked about him. His play had been inconsistent. You were going to look for an option to at least compete or to come in as the projected starter. So there's a reason why we've seen a couple of quarterbacks leave the room. But I do think that this discussion about a quarterback will only get resolved once Wisconsin finds out its quarterbacks coach. Luke Fickell mentioned on National Signing Day that there was a good possibility Wisconsin was going to hire an offensive coordinator and a quarterbacks coach. Well, there's a reason why he said that. Jeff Grimes, Wisconsin's new offensive coordinator coming over from Kansas, has a background with the offensive line, but there's a reason Wisconsin wanted him. His run scheme has been really effective regardless of the spot that he goes. And when he has a good quarterback, especially a dual threat quarterback, you've seen his offenses really thrive, specifically at stints with Baylor and BYU, where he was named the Broyles, he was a candidate for the Broyles Award given to the top assistant in the country. However, like I mentioned, he's an offensive line background. He doesn't have a quarterback's background. And especially looking at Wisconsin, a Power 4 school looking to compete with some of the top teams in the Big Ten, you're going to need a known presence as your quarterback's coach to be able to effectively recruit the position, which is what Wisconsin's looking for right now. My understanding is that Wisconsin would like to target a quarterback's coach that could bring along a quarterback with them in the transfer portal. That would obviously allow for a seamless transition because the quarterback's coach would probably align well with your offensive scheme, and they would have a good rapport with the quarterback that they would bring along in the transfer portal. But because of the domino effect that would have, everything seems fluid at the moment. I don't think that there's a true front runner for the quarterback's coach position, even if Wisconsin wants to get that done in the near future. And because there's not a quarterback's coach position, or because that position isn't necessarily filled, I don't think you've seen the quarterback's position get filled yet. And so to me, what I think Wisconsin wants is a veteran presence at quarterback. As you mentioned, the room is rather young at the moment. That allows them to develop some of their younger options in 2025 before potentially going towards them in 2026. So at the moment, you don't really know necessarily who the quarterback target is. And also, there's a good possibility that the quarterback target isn't even in the portal currently. And so I think both of those, discussions are going to happen simultaneously. I'm not saying that the quarterback will come from whatever the school the coach will come, but I do think that the new quarterback's coach at Wisconsin is going to have a significant role in bringing in whoever the transfer portal quarterback will be, which is seeming more and more like a reality rather than a what if at this stage.
Well, that all makes sense, Rowan. And look, if the quarterback's coach is not going to bring in one of his guys, then that says to me this has to be, not like there's a quarterback's coach like that's in the top of everyone's list. Wow, quarterbacks coaches, but it's going to have to be a quarterback's coach of some renown. It's not going to be a guy that Fick likes the cut of his jib and he's like, ooh, I kind of think this guy has some potential here. It's going to, if I'm tracking the logic, it is going to have to be a known quantity with a proven track record of success, if not at their current school, which is hopeful, at multiple schools, because quarterback coaches often move around a lot, like other coaches do. And I find it hard to believe that when the Grimes hire was made, and this isn't to contradict what you said, because there may not be a front runner, but I have to believe there's a short list. And whether it's a short list with dominoes that have to fall before it can be discussed, I don't know. But look, Fickle or McIntosh slash Fickle, they kind of have a history now of keeping it tight to their vest and coming up with surprising picks. Grimes, I did not see on one list of the Wisconsin Badger pundit someone who covers them. And this isn't, I didn't have them. I didn't have them on my list. I had Dylan Graffin for a podcast. And these are bright guys who have their ear to the ground and have multiple contacts, yourself included, within the program. No Jeff Grimes didn't come up. So I wouldn't be shocked if Fickle has his guy right now. Maybe that takes a little bit of, you know, dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make it a reality. But I strongly suspect there's that name is circled, that there have been discussions, and I suspect there's a quarterback move in play related to that as well. Maybe, and again, this is speculation, but this is, as someone who is starting to understand how Fickle does things, I have to believe that's happening. Um, Leaving it out there, and you say someone's not might not be in the portal. That's true. There are the majority of people who are going to be in the portal are not in the portal yet. That's the crazy thing. I mean, this is just a wild west. You just went silent on me. I can do that to people. I think you got your
We're
mute
good.
on. There you
We
go.
just had 17 days. I was about to say we still have 17 days, before the portal, just to enter the portal. We have 17 days before that window closes. So, as you're saying, there's a lot of options still available that maybe have not yet come into the transfer portal yet.
Yeah, and I'm gonna hold off on saying, well, what's the guy you want, or who's the quarterback you want, who's the receiver you want, because the reality is, and I know this, I can tell by the offers that are going out from Fickle right now. They're going to have to diamond in the rough this a little bit again this year. I can already tell you. See the amount of FCS offers I've already seen, and that doesn't mean you can't find a good FCS player. We certainly did that in the last class, but like it's just going to have to. They're going to have to. Fickle and his staff are going to have to do a better job of finding gold in those pans in this cycle than they did the previous transfer cycle. I think that is just. We had a couple guys hit, okay, but Hills and some of these other guys. But boy, I think it's fair to say the 2024 transfer class was by and large a bust. I don't think there's any these pass rushers that they brought in. Those were not Big Ten pass rushers. I don't know if it was coaching, effort, their ability, some combination of the three, but they are going to have people in that defensive lineup next year who are more disruptive. We cannot go into the schedule with Miami at Alabama, Maryland at Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State at Oregon, Washington, Indiana, Illinois at Minnesota. That ain't going to work without disruptive defensive players. And some of that's going to come from within, like in Allegro and some of these guys coming up. But I just have to believe that we have to be good in the portal and smart in the portal. It's quality, not quantity. But what are your thoughts on how the portal is looking right now on the intake side, and whether we'll grab some of these people that have come in for visits?
Yeah, I think that when you're looking at the portal right now, Wisconsin, like you mentioned, it might not be reported, nor do I think it will be until truly that move materializes. I think they're putting that quarterback question not aside, but they understand where they currently stand with who they might target as their quarterbacks coach, who that second quarterback will be. And I think that those two dominoes, like I said, will come rather close to each other. And so when you look kind of at what Wisconsin's doing in the portal, you're seeing a lot of offers out to players at key positions. You mentioned the pass rush was not, non-existent this year specifically from the guys who really came into the team as transfers looking to make a big impact, and a lot of those guys
Absolutely.
probably will not be here next year. And when you look at the offers Wisconsin's going to, they're trying to get bigger edge rushers. They're trying to get some linebacker help. They're trying to get some cornerback and safety help. And you've also seen some, offers out to receivers, which Wisconsin now needs with Trech Kahuna entering the portal, and potentially even tight end, to get a more veteran option with Riley Nowakowski leaving. And so you're seeing them kind of address a lot of their bigger holes while keeping this decision kind of on the back burner, while understanding, that those talks are fluid and that they're trying to figure out and finalize terms probably with whoever their top targets are at the quarterback's coach position, as well as who that might entail with the quarterback position. I think all of those discussions are currently happening, and I don't know necessarily on a timeline for it, but it feels like Wisconsin might come to a resolution sooner than later with both of those options.
I think that makes sense. And just as you note and as you laid out schematically, a lot of moving parts right now. And you mentioned obviously quarterback is by and large the number are far and away the number one transfer need right now. But you mentioned a few other ones, and one that has become readily apparent to me is disruptive pass rushers. You mentioned that some help on the defensive line. You got some kids who are younger who hope they'll mature into that. But expecting PV and some of these freshmen to come in and make an impact is probably a bridge too far. But the secondary losing what amounted to an entire class of 2023 guys now to the portal underscores just how thin that secondary room is, not just at corner, but also at safety. So my guess is, and I'm curious what you think, we're probably going to bring 3 or 4 safety slash cornerback guys in. It could be depth pieces, but guys who can be on the 2 deep. I think that is a massive priority, especially given all the passing offenses we're going to be facing next year. We're going to see teams like Ohio State and Oregon and Bama on there and things like that. It's going to be a gauntlet. You heard anything about how they're trying to adjust those rooms?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're mentioning cornerback specifically.
Corner, but also safety. I mean,
Safety,
they're
yeah.
kind of mirror images of each other in terms of, especially when you have positional flexibility with some of the guys in the room that could potentially do both. It just seemed like an area of need, to put it
Yeah.
lightly.
No, definitely. And I think safety is a little bit more of a clearer need in the sense Wisconsin went into this offseason knowing that they were going to lose Hunter Wohler and Preston Zachman, right? And those are your two experienced starters that you will not have next year. Austin Brown was going to step up, but the guy who was expected to step up, a guy who really flashed in both spring ball and more so fall camp, with his physicality as well as the athleticism that people knew about, was Braedyn Moore. That was probably the biggest surprise so far entering the transfer portal, apart from no, that would probably be the biggest surprise. Everybody else, when you look at the cornerbacks, in that 2023 room, it was understandable why why they were moving out. Jonas Duclona, Jace Arnold, Amari Snowden, Duclona and Arnold, there wasn't really a clear path to them getting starting reps with Ricardo Hallman expected back next year. And then on the other side, Amari Snowden, he fell behind the depth chart against Xavier Lucas, and it wasn't clear necessarily whether his style. I know, Mike Tressel has dealt with those longer cornerbacks before, but a guy with maybe not as much athleticism, it wasn't clear whether his style would have best fit this defense. And so both positions are definitely needs, but it's kind of in different ways. Safety, Wisconsin needs a starter. You're going to need a starter next to Austin Brown. There are some nice walk-ons in the room for sure that a lot of players have mentioned before, Owen Arnett, Charlie Jarvis, and guys like that, but you don't expect them to be starting level players next year, and you don't expect some of the younger guys to be able to step up and immediately start in that room in 2025. And so I do think that Wisconsin's going to look for an experienced starter. There have been a couple of guys who they've already reached out to try and get official visits for. I think that's a clear position of need, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even target just one, but also multiple safeties in the transfer portal to add to their depth, to add to a rotation because they like to play multiple safeties in games, and also, look for a starter at cornerback. Though I think it's more so they're looking for additional depth that should play in 2025. You kind of have your
Yeah,
starters locked with Hallman and Lucas. You're looking for the guys who can play in the 2 deep alongside them because you don't really have any more of that depth that was expected to be in the 2 deep anymore.
right. And the good news for Wisconsin, I guess, in that sense, is although finding a star is never easy in the portal, no matter what position you're talking about, finding a serviceable 2 deep kind of player in the portal at safety or corner is significantly easier than doing the same for defensive line. It's
Yeah.
just the numbers are they are, and that's why you see guys like James Thompson Jr. You know, going to be a rich man. It's a fact,
Yeah.
and that's good for him. I mean, I don't begrudge anyone for doing the things they need to do, but yeah.
No, that's true. And I mean, when you mention the defensive line specifically, right now it's a tough position for Wisconsin because one, if you want defensive linemen in the transfer portal, you're going to have to spend some money. If you want quality defensive linemen, serviceable guys, you can't necessarily go into next year banking on guys, thinking that you can develop 2 to 3 guys coming in maybe from lower tier schools or something like that. Obviously, Elijah Hills was a big hit this year, but the defensive line was still a significant it's still a significant need, and you lose two potential starters next year with James Thompson and Kurt Neal, as well as some depth pieces, in that group. You can't only rely on the younger guys. I think there's a clear need at the position as well. But I also think next year, in the sense Wisconsin might see a more of a philosophical change to help that room out. We'll see what that entails in the spring. But yeah, I mean that's a group where you're definitely gonna have to pay to get some guys, unfortunately. Well, that's just the reality in college football. And Wisconsin needs players right now because they're really lacking at the position.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm never surprised in this day and age, but Thompson, and again, maybe it's a philosophy change, but I would think Thompson Jr. surprised me. I mean, again, maybe it's just about the dollars and cents, and that in which case, kind of like Chucky Hepburn, it's not about loving Wisconsin. It's about, hey, I'm trying to make a little money for my family. Who knows what my NFL future is? You know, so I don't begrudge these kids for doing that. And look, I mean, Thompson's getting offers. He's getting
Big.
offers with some bag,
Yeah.
probably more than we were giving him. Neil, similar situation. It's such a premium position, and frankly, I would have been great with having both those guys return. I don't think either one of them are superstars, but I
Yeah.
do think, time without Thompson was pretty obvious not having him in there. I mean, he was a player that mattered, and their work is cut out for them to replace those guys, not only replace them, but to add more. But anyway, good. Well, thanks for jumping on. We could go a long time, but I want to get you out of here. I know you're wearing many hats: student, uh, gambler, writer, editor, hero, lover. I don't know. You wear a lot of hats, buddy. But thanks for jumping on the Scary Hours podcast, and keep up the good work at Bucky's Fifth Quarter. Really appreciate what you do there.
No, I mean, this is the best podcast out there when it comes to Wisconsin. I always appreciate you. Thank you for having me on, and this was a blast
All right, I'm Wisconsin.
on Wisconsin.